Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I am your host, Ricky Camilleri, and our next guest is one of the best actresses there is, in my opinion. You've seen her in Bridge of Spies, Birdman, Beautiful Boy, The Office, Gone Baby Gone, where she was nominated for an Academy Award, and now you can see Amy Ryan in the noir thriller Strange But True, where she plays a mother trying to solve a mystery following the death of her son. Let's take a look. Everybody, please welcome the great Amy Ryan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Congrats on the film. I loved it. You're fantastic in this movie.
Thank you.
What I loved about this movie was this idea of what seems like a completely impossible mystery that is made that way because of this tragedy that nobody can that nobody can sort of divert their eyes from in a lot of ways. And you play this incredibly capable woman who's kind of trapped in the past.
Yeah, the woman I play, Charlene Chase, was once this like loving, vivacious, joke-telling, laughing librarian who really has not coped well since the death of her son on his high school prom night, and as a result, just her whole world has just darkened. And if she's suffering, she wants other people to suffer too.
You can see it in the lighting of the house that she lives in. It's
Yeah.
very gray.
Very gray.
There are no lights on in that house. What drew you to the script, to the character?
I thought the story was just outrageous and implausible. And the same thing that what the audience goes through. I mean, I experienced that reading the script and like, this is ridiculous, but I can't, the idea that a woman would show up claiming to be pregnant by someone who died 5 years earlier, but yet there was enough of this, is it science? Is it, the supernatural? Like, what is it that hooks in that makes the logical brain go, well, maybe something, and they spiral down with it. And then I just love that all the characters, they were just, really richly drawn and full.
Well, that's the tragedy, right? That's the past, without obviously spoiling anything. Because of what happened to them, both the failing of her marriage as well as this tragedy leads all of them down this ridiculous, insane path.
Yeah, and I think also just the way people cope with death, with tragedy, and obviously some people do better than others. And it's not autobiographical, but John Searles, who wrote the best-selling book that the film is based on, he had a death in his family, and so this was kind of his way of processing that loss in his family, and just how other relationships of the living broke apart, and how do they mend? How do you continue to acknowledge the living as you're, obviously very much mourning the dead?
A number of your scenes are with Greg Kinnear, who I think is one of the most solid actors, working, and is almost very underrated and almost under the radar in a way. He's always in something, and he's always really solid, but I never hear anybody saying, Greg Kinnear is one of the great actors. And I'm
I think he's a great actor. Yeah, he's Oscar-nominated, Greg Kinnear. And I think it was we all fell in love with him in Talk Soup, so our first introduction to him is this kind of, really carefree, lighthearted guy with this, sharp wit, and but that's who he is on set as well. He's so much fun. I kind of get in trouble, giggling with him before takes start, but when you're in the scene with him, he's so locked down. He's so focused and just real. This is our second film together.
What was the?
We did Green Zone.
Right, the Paul Greengrass movie.
Yeah.
You have been in so many incredible films by so many different filmmakers. Is it the director and the filmmaker that sort of draws you into a movie most of the time?
Yes, and a combination of, you get the chance to work with a Sidney Lumet or, a Clint Eastwood, of course you say yes, and then if the part is rich as well, even better, and so I just feel like I've been so lucky, especially with someone like Sidney Lumet. He was such a great teacher. I got to work with him a few times over, and
didn't he cast you in 3 different parts?
Yeah, he did on his
show,
TV series. Yeah, he was like, "You'll figure it out. The audience won't know it's you. You'll figure it out." He just gave actors so much room. He trusted them that they could do it, and so that just having that freedom and that belief is more than half of the work, you know.
He also, I mean, not one of the last. I'm sure some directors still do it, but it's hard to get the money to do it. He was one of the last directors who really insisted upon rehearsals prior to shooting. Right?
Yeah, he did it
that
for all his films. And his thinking was, we don't have time. He shoots fast, 1 or 2 takes tops. He'd rather be home with his family. He's like, he said, my darling, no actor is that interesting. You should have it done by 2 takes, you know, by 4 takes. It's not going to change that much. And so if you're prepared and you're rehearsed, and when you shoot out of order, you'll know emotionally that it makes sense out of order because we've rehearsed it like a play. Right. And it was true. Like you were
that
very
also gives
prepared.
you the time to rewrite the scenes in minor ways, and so by the time that you get to the set, they're taught and they're exactly what they need to be.
Yeah, and nothing is the surprises that happen are good because it's between the emotions, but like the set would be taped out. Like these will be the size chairs you'll have. There will be a rug here. There'll be 2 coffee tables. You know, so it was all really well planned. It's
a complete difference than I imagine what most, not even just indie films are, but most movies are now, which is that if you get to the set and a scene doesn't work or isn't perfect, you can't really do that much about it.
No, and that's a harrowing position to be in. We actually had that on Green Zone. There was a scene that between myself and Matt Damon, and none of us really could figure it out. It felt redundant. We didn't know why it was happening in this moment, and we took from the morning up until the lunch break just talking about it, and the whole crew which was obviously very expensive to just sit around, and the day got pushed, and we went to lunch, and we came back, and Paul just said, I still don't really understand the scene, and neither did Matt or myself. He's like, but let's just turn the cameras on and see what happens. And the scene in the film is actually really good because it's 2 people panic, not knowing what to do. And then that actually fed the story. But we didn't know that. That was just like a weird happy accident. So there's this like...
Was that as it was written on the script, that it was
No.
2 panicked people, or did the 2 of you just kind of go, well, this is what's happening in the movie, so let's
It's
go
written
for
where
that.
someone comes in and gives information, and the information's wrong, so someone gets a lashing about it. You know, one is getting, cut down. But now you have 2 people really fighting for their existence to be there in the room, like trying to make themselves seen and heard and not really knowing what's going to come of it.
Right, a scene is only going to be better if you have 2 characters who think they're right, rather than one who is right and one who's not. Yeah. That's kind of a dead scene.
Yeah, but sometimes you can overthink it, you can overtalk it, and that was the lesson there. Like, well, just do it. Let's just see what happens with human nature.
You've worked with Spielberg, who I'd imagine also gets the chance, if he gets there on the day, to figure out a scene, to rework it. But at the same time, he doesn't do that many takes, does he? Or does he do a lot?
He doesn't do many takes either.
Clint does like one, right?
If that. Like
Clint
sometimes
does,
he shoots the rehearsal. But Stephen will do a few more. But what he will redo on the day is this passion for film he still has. It's not dampened at all, and he gets this idea, and he's down on the floor like, playing a kid with toys, and he calls for a camera, and he's just adding shots, and that scene in Bridge of Spies when all the flash bulbs were popping off.
My favorite shot of the movie.
Oh, well, that happened on the day, because as the flash bulbs fall off, and we had this sea of bulbs at our feet, he's like, oh, let's get a shot of you literally walking out over glass, and that was really fun and exciting to watch, kind of courtside, him getting an idea.
You still get a sense of that in his movies, even when it's like Ready Player One and it's a $250 million movie or something. You still get a sense of a craftsman playing and figuring out his craft within that medium.
Yeah, absolutely. And the everyone around him, he's worked with a few films over, and so he really gives a lot of leeway to the other department heads, a lot of trust, and then it all comes together.
You're from Queens originally, right?
Yes.
When did you start acting?
Professionally, I started acting when I graduated Performing Arts High School. I started at 18, did a play, a Neil Simon play. So that was my first job.
And I mean, you had a number of jobs prior to Gone Baby Gone, but that, I think, for mainstream purposes was your breakthrough, would you say?
Well, I started mostly with theater, but I think, yeah, well, Gone Baby Gone was a huge turn in the road for me. Uh, and but I think before that, I started to get another idea of not wanting to kind of play the same thing. And I think Capote it was a really small role, but it was something where people didn't recognize me in it, and I thought that was a really good thing to lock into. Like, if I can keep fooling people along the way, and also just
Sort
like
of a decision to be to be a kind of a character actor for.
I always felt like I was a character actor, even at 18. I don't know why I really say that, other than like, I mean, well, I wasn't the tall, ravishing like drink of water, but I thought this is more interesting to just like be representative of just real human behavior, and then I can see a longer career that way. I can grow old into that career.
Right. If the lead part happens, that's great, but you can also have like a number of characters that you play in a year that are varied and weird.
Yeah.
Not weird, but
Varied,
just
no,
varied.
weird is good. I like weird, so that's okay.
What's the weirdest part that you feel like you've played that was maybe not even weird to other people, but weird to you?
I like this character I played on High Maintenance, an episode of High Maintenance. She was pretty weird. Definitely more bold in her life than I am in mine. So that was kind of fun to dance around in.
Gone Baby Gone, what was that audition process like?
I was out in Los Angeles because it was pilot season. I kind of went reluctantly. I really didn't want to be on a TV show, but I was working with a new agent, so I thought I should make a good face of like going on these auditions. But the first audition he sent me on was Gone Baby Gone, and so I met Ben, and I prepared a few of the scenes, and he asked me afterwards, where in Boston are you from? I said, I'm from Queens, and that kind of took him by surprise. So he offered me the job on the spot there.
Wow.
Which was great, but then the casting director was like, you can't do that, and there was all this, he's like, I can do that. But about a week later, he called me back, and I had gone home saying, like, he offered me the job, but everyone's like, you don't do that. You can't do that. So you have to I went back a week later, and I went to his office, and he's like, let's just look at my, this is my Red Sox, memorabilia. He's like, I'm not going to make you read again, but I'm going to let them think that I'm auditioning you again. So just don't worry. Let's just sit here and hang out for a little while. so because he too, he was also being
what
put
a vote
to
of
the test.
Confidence, right?
Well, he, like to his credit, he's like, I know how to get Boston right. And that's my main goal. Like, I've seen other films where it was just a little too stretched out of proportion and caricatures. And he and John Toll, the cinematographer, did this beautiful thing where they went around Boston and shot B-roll footage, which is in the film, of locals, just captured like real-life images. And then he handed it to the cast and said, it's your job to fit into their world, not the other way around. So, and he's like, I'm going to get that right. But he knew he was being put to the test, and people were raising eyebrows that Ben Affleck's directing a movie. He knew he was being somewhat laughed at for the idea of wanting to do this. So there was a lot of pressure on him. So I think he felt a little, kinship that no one knew me. I was untested, and as was he. So there was a good camaraderie there.
Right, he could trust you at that point. You weren't going to come in and be kind of like, okay, what's Ben Affleck going to try to tell me to do now?
No, I totally trusted him. I knew he knew this world. I mean, it was evident in our conversation and the script that he co-wrote. So, and he certainly knew it better than I did. So I wasn't going to pretend to know more than him.
You mentioned Capote. You did 3 films with Philip Seymour Hoffman, right?
Yeah.
Capote, Jack Goes Boating, and what?
The Devil Before the Devil Knows You're Dead.
Of course,
Yeah.
the Sidney Lumet film before. That is such an amazing movie.
Yeah.
Lumet's last film as well. And you're also, you work a lot in the New York theater community. Did you know him from there prior to
Yeah, we
working?
actually did a play years ago before that off-Broadway with a company at the time called the Drama Department. I was in a Peter Hedges one-act play, and he was in a Richard Greenberg one-act play. So the evening
Peter
was...
Hedges, who is Lucas Hedges' father,
right,
and
yeah.
the director of the film last year with Lucas and Julia
That's
Roberts.
right, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was it like sort of working with him in those movies, having that relationship?
Well, in Jack Goes Boating, had the double advantage of working opposite Phil, but also he directed the film, which
First and only movie that he directed, right?
and it was you know, it was a task for him. He didn't want to star in it, and but he wanted to make the film, and some other actor last minute dropped out, and he had originated the role off Broadway. So anyway, he decided to do it, but it was pretty taxing for being in the role and then taking himself out, and he'd go watch the monitor. So we might do like 2 or 3 takes, and then he'd go and watch, you know, and see what adjustments had to be made. But he was phenomenal to work with. I mean, because Phil, as I'm sure everyone knows, like his work is on so many, it's such a rich layer cake. I mean, he can do 4 or 5 things at once of human behavior and thought. And then now as a director, he's coming to you and saying, do this, but cover that up, and then don't forget to do that. Okay, go. And you're like, what?
I mean,
I don't know if I could do that. But
I rewatched The Master a few weeks ago because I watch it regularly. It's like one of the most beautiful films ever made, just visually. Yeah. And what he does in each scene. And then recently people have been posting Along Came Polly clips, which watching him do broad comedy is still so filled with weird pathos and like brilliant things that no other actor would know how to get away with in broad comedy in a way.
Yeah. I mean, I think my favorite thing about him in Boogie Nights is just like pulling his shirt over his belly self-consciously, like that. Just that image. I think that's the first time I fell in love with him as an actor. Actually.
I like the heavy breathing that he does in Boogie Nights every now and then, and the kind of like scared, dim-witted face that he's always. Oh yeah, he's amazing in that film. You know, we mentioned Clint Eastwood, and you said maybe he does like he shoots the rehearsal, or what is that like? I'm always fascinated by that because that seems like such a terrifying proposition as an actor, which is like you're really losing kind of control there if he is just doing 1 take or the rehearsal.
Yeah, you really hope for the best. But I had a couple of friends who had worked on other films before, and they gave me the warning ahead of time. They're like, really be prepared. It's not a joke. Like, know your lines. Don't use the first take to warm up or anything like that. And that was really helpful. And, you know, honestly, like the big challenge is when you walk into a room and there's Clint Eastwood is to tell your brain to stop going, oh my God, that's Clint Eastwood. Like, it's hard not to see the whole history of film of Clint Eastwood, you know, but that's your boss, and he's gonna tell you where to stand, and you know. But he was a super nice, like mellow man. Like he was great to work with. But
you kind of have to be if you're gonna make that many movies a year, like pretty in control and even keeled while making them.
Yeah, and he played piano like in between, you know, when there were breaks. You just hear this like classical music playing off in the background. You know, we just have this piano on set and. But yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
And you don't ask any. I mean, like from what I understand, you don't really ask questions about the character or anything like that with him.
He gives a lot of freedom. He wants you to do it. But I mean, you know, it's kind of there's one scene with myself and Dennis O'Hare. I have to punch him, and I remember Dennis took the lead on that with Clint. He's like, so you know, is the stuntman here? Like, how are we going to do this? And how? And he just did it like, you know, Clint in that slow molasses way. He's like, I'll show you how to throw a punch, you know. And it was for me, so I was like, oh my God, Clint Eastwood is my stunt coordinator. That was amazing. And it's like smooth, and he just wound up, like, you know, I was like, okay, I think I can do that. But that was it. Like, he doesn't want the fanfare. He's just keep it simple, pared down.
Well, most of the great, I mean, even, you know, whether they're doing 1 or 70 takes, most of the best directors are kind of are like that in a lot of ways, where they've got their small group of people and they want everything honed in, and they don't want any distractions on the set because they want everyone to be really working on what's going to be in that frame.
And I've liked that, like, since working with directors that move quickly, I really respond to that. Like, you know, or if directors, if I have the luxury, if they, you know, before a job, they say, how do you like to work? It's one of the first things I tell them. I say, I like to go fast. I like to, I said, I promise you I'll be prepared. Like, you know, I don't want to do it more than a few times.
What is it like for you when you do have to do it more than a few times? What do you notice goes away or becomes harder for you?
I'm playing a game in my head of guessing how many more takes they're gonna do. Like, I think
you lose.
I think this is the last one. I think I kind of lose interest in a way because, and then you start going to a little bit of self-doubt. Like, I don't know what else to do. do I just do this louder? Do I just, and then sometimes magic can happen because then you're so beaten out of it, you are relaxed, and something will fly, something will come out. But I find like being shot out of the cannon is a bit better.
Really? With rehearsal or without?
If we're going to rehearse, then I want to really rehearse like 4 weeks and really dive into it. But if you're just going to like read through it once or twice, I find that just dilutes it.
Who gets to do that? Just Sidney Lumet, right?
I think so. And Phil did it for Jack Goes Boating.
Right. Well, he's a theater. Yeah. I mean, both him and Sidney are theater guys.
But no, not many people rehearse.
Yeah. Was before The Devil Knows You're Dead and your work with Sidney like really your first sort of entry into doing a lot of film and television?
Yeah, I think so. Or like ones that I was really excited about. And, I do the occasional Law and Order episode, help pay for my health insurance, as we talked about. I didn't mean to bring that back up. But, that kept me,
Girls gotta eat.
Yeah. Girls gotta get some health insurance. So,
but I'm wondering if you ever felt like after working with Sidney Lumet, like a little spoiled in a way, like no one else is really we're not gonna get this kind of freedom.
Yeah, but you do find it. Like there are just this past year, I worked with two incredible directors. One, Liz Garbus, who was making her first feature. She's a documentary filmmaker.
She was just here for Who Killed Garrett Phillips, her documentary.
Yeah. So, and I mean, we were in like really harsh conditions. It was freezing cold out at the beach and, very dark story, subject matter. And you just look over and her face is beaming. She's so thrilled to be there. And, for that energy, you did want to do a few more takes and be in it. And the same like Sarah Colangelo, I did a film called What Is Life Worth? I just find these women were so prepared. They had their shot lists, and they also, when the shots couldn't happen because of maybe weather or something else, they quickly adjusted into something else. And so I've been spoiled by many ways. Like it's not just a director that works fast, but I've been really spoiled by just being with rich artists and collaborators. And
are there still, I imagine there are directors that you're kind of dying to work with?
Oh, yeah, it's a long list. Yeah, I'd love to work with Paul Thomas Anderson. I mean, who wouldn't? And I'd love to work with Sofia Coppola. I mean, there's just, endless list.
I imagine, though, that question gets asked all the time, and there's the obvious answers at the top, like Paul Thomas Anderson or Sofia Coppola. But I'm sure, like, if you, having worked in the industry now for a while, know of other directors as well that are phenomenal, that actors and technicians love, but are not necessarily like a name brand director in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw 8th Grade not that long ago. I was like blown away by that movie. I just like anyone, if somebody's going for something, it's not just derivative of some other film, then I'm happy to take a chance with that director.
Knowing that there's a vision behind it.
Yeah, and it's not just something that doesn't land or resonate with someone at the end of the day. But I was excited by that film and his work in that. I was like, that's an interesting voice.
I mean, speaking of vision, Birdman. Yeah. Right. I mean, how intensive a shoot that was, and if it wasn't intense, how did Inarritu kind of manage a calm or...
It was so intense.
It was intense.
It was so intense. But it was so much fun. Like, it wasn't intense like, mom and dad are fighting and don't make a sound.
Which
we're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But no, this was... That we rehearsed. We had 4 weeks, and we rehearsed it to an inch, and we rehearsed with the camera crew because they were part of this moving organism. I mean, you couldn't be off an inch, otherwise you'd ruin the shot. And... all of us at some point ruined a shot, and you were relieved when you did. The boom operator, it came in the shot, or I twice bumped into the camera, and that meant we had to start since I guess everyone knows saw Birdman here. There was no editing. It's just the entire movie, one take, and we had to go back to not just the start of my scene, but the start of Zach and Michael's scene, because it connected to that. So you feel bad. Like, they maybe nailed their scene, but I'm like, sorry, you have to do it again too.
The fact that you or somebody else messed up the shot sort of meant that, like, I bet seeing that felt like, well, it's not the end of the world. We can do this.
And then your greatest fear happens, and you're still standing, so it's okay. But Michael Keaton in that was so extraordinary. I mean, the pressure on his shoulders. You know, he's like Usain Bolt running. You know, it's top speed, but landing. You know, like Mary Lou Retton each time, just like accuracy and emotional life, and he was so amazing in that.
And so you had to hit. I mean, I had thought that they shot that in a way where marks weren't necessarily as important as they normally are.
No, they were very like life or death important. It was very accurate, and then like fun stuff because it was so unusual with that. Like when we first rehearsed. Alejandro's like, well, how would you do this scene? I was like, well, I guess I'd come in and I'd sit on this chair and talk to my ex-husband. And then the camera crew's like, oh, that doesn't work. We see ourselves in the mirror. And like, well, I guess, you know, Michael's like, I could sit on the edge of the couch. That makes sense. And then sounds like, oh, we're in the way. And then Michael goes, well, I guess I could lay on the dressing room counter. And I was like, I guess I could talk to him through the mirror. And that weird choice would never have been the first choice of a conventional film.
Right, it becomes incredibly collaborative.
Yeah,
everybody
and we needed it to be that. There was no other way to do it, you know. But then suddenly you have this strange kind of character development that he comes off stage and the first thing he does is lay on his dressing room table. Like it's odd, but it's great.
But that must have been such an incredible feeling for the entire crew to be such a part of every shot. I mean, the sound guy at that point is helping to design what the frame is going to be, and not just being like, okay, you guys are here. I'm right here.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No, you definitely felt like you were in this together.
Are you picky?
In what way?
About your role?
With my food?
Wouldn't it have been so strange if it had nothing to do with your artistry whatsoever?
Yeah, exactly.
Your vacation destinations.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I am.
No, but about the movies or the shows that
sometimes I'm very picky. Sometimes I'm not. I mean, I try to be picky when, you know, I really feel like I'm repeating myself. Same type of character, same type of situation. So then I'll just say no, thank you, but I'll sit this one out. But yeah, that's where I'm picky. And then I'm picky now as like certain destinations, locations. I'm like, where are you shooting this movie? For how many weeks?
You're a New Yorker. You don't like leaving New York, right?
I want to stay home. Yeah. I want to travel for vacation. Yeah.
What has been the most difficult part you've played?
I think this film that I have coming out next year, Lost Girls, was really difficult. I mean, it was good hard work, but I think for the first time, like on the emotional world of a story, it was just, it's not that I brought that work home and I was depressed, but it was like getting into it every day. It was dark. It was really dark, and it was based on real people, and that story still remains dark in that world. And I just felt the weight of it, you know. And I also maybe a little guilt of how luxurious my version of it is, like being driven to work to tell this story and be given food and coffee in between, and you know, that was hard to.
That self-awareness,
stay buoyant,
of like recognizing, like sitting in the back of the car that's driving you, being like, oh, it's just so sad.
Well, it's also strange. I'm like, I have this wish for this film that it'll be so good that it'll draw attention to the film when they reopen this investigation and solve this mystery. Like that's my biggest wish for this film called Lost Girls. But there's another part of it, I think, like when you have like a real tragedy in life and then like we're making art out of it. Yeah. So obviously art can help a lot of people cope with similar situations. It has a place, but sometimes I struggle with that. Like,
oh, I do too.
Oh, what are we doing? We're selling popcorn, you know.
Which seems to be more and more of a thing. I feel like movies and TV shows, for some reason, are even more ripped from the headlines than they used to be. There's this idea of authenticity, and I think it has to do with the rise of documentary, where people want to feel like they're watching something very close to reality and to what actually existed, that more and more we're for lack of a better word, I don't want to say exploiting because some is and some is not. It's really up to the eye of the beholder what's exploitative.
Yeah.
But sometimes it does feel like, oh, this thing happened, everybody knows about it, let's make a movie about it right away.
It's those moments where, like, on set, I'll be like, my job is really weird. Like, this is my job. But
I love your work so much. Thank you so much for coming back. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Same here.
Strained but True, with a wonderful performance by you, Amy Ryan, and everybody else in the film, is out now. Audiences can see it, right?
Yeah, opens today, and it's also available on streaming on iTunes and Amazon and Hulu and
everywhere you can watch stuff.
Everywhere else you can stream.
Everybody, please give a round of applause for the great Amy Ryan. Let's hear it.